Hey, everybody, and we are back with none other than somebody I read, Mastering the Art of the Close, The Psychology of Selling, Eat That Frog. All of these fabulous books by the one author and person that's changed my life immensely, Brian Tracy. Brian, this is a dream come true for me. How are you today, sir?
I'm fine. Thank you, Devin. It's a real pleasure to be with you because you are doing such great work in the world by getting these ideas and ideas from my friend Dennis Waitley and Les Brown and others, getting these ideas to people who are hungry for them.
I think that's such a great thing you said, that are hungry for them. And there was one thing you said right before we began, is that you're very passionate about helping people unleash the untapped potential that is within them. What do you mean when you say that, Dennis? I mean, excuse me, when you say that, Brian?
Uh, well, every person has extraordinary potential, and depending upon how they're brought up, and this was a real eye-opener for me. If your parents have never told you that you have tremendous potential, then it's basically driving past a store that you never go into. And one of the things that changed my life, maybe the great thing, was I stumbled into the discovery of what I call the great law, and it was discovered by Aristotle in 350 BC. And they said that for 2,000 years, all of philosophy was merely a commentary on Aristotle. And what Aristotle discovered was the great timeless truths. One of them was that the number one goal for all people at all times and places is to be happy. People want to be happy, and everything that they do is an attempt to achieve their own happiness. So a person gets a job. Why? So they can earn money. Why? So they can have a home and provide for their family. Why? So that they can be happy. But always, it's called the primum movum. It's the ultimate moving factor in the personality of all people, is to be happy. Then the question is, what makes you happy? And this is something that each person is responsible for discovering. The second thing that I learned, and this probably changed my life more than anything else, when I was 23, 24, I stumbled on, I didn't know what it was until much later, but I stumbled on the great law. And the great law, Aristotle discovered it as well. It's called the Aristotelian principle of causality, which just basically says that everything is cause and effect. That if you want to achieve anything, you find what someone else has done to achieve it and do the same thing. And nobody's better than you, nobody's smarter than you. This is why people come from all over the world to the US, because if you get here, nobody cares who you are or where you came from. All they care is who you are today and where you're going. It's the most wonderful thing. So when I was 24 years old and I was in sales and I was struggling and I just couldn't make a living, I was living in a small one-room apartment. I noticed one guy in our company was selling 10 times as much as anybody else, and he wasn't even working very hard. His name was Pete, and he would kind of roll in around 9 or 9:30. He would go out and make calls and make sales and go out for lunch with a prospect, and he'd work in the afternoon, quit about 5, and he was earning so much more money. So one day, and I still remember, I have the picture in my mind. I went to him and I asked him, Pete, what are you doing differently from me? How come you're making so many sales? And he said, well, I'll help you if I can. He said, just show me your sales presentation. And now I had heard about sales presentations, but I'd never seen one before. And I said, well, I don't have a sales presentation. He said, well, what do you do when you meet a prospect? What do you say? Well, I tell them about our product and how good it is and how it's better than anything else. And this is what they're looking for. He says, no, stop. He says, that's not how to sell. The way to sell is by asking questions. Asking questions. First of all, you have to determine, is this a prospect, someone who can and will buy and use your product or service, or are they a suspect? If they're a suspect, it may be that they're not in the market. They can't afford it, don't want it, don't need it, and so on. So the first thing you do is you ask questions. about what you're doing now in this area and how it's working for you and what are your plans for the future. And then you look for ways to help. And I teach my audiences, literally 2 or 3 million sales professionals in 84 countries. I tell them that the way you see yourself has an enormous impact on what you accomplish. And you must see yourself as a helper. See yourself as a helper, not a salesman, but or saleswoman, but a helper. Your job is to help people to improve the quality of their lives and their work with your product or service. Your job is to find people who want that improvement and then show them how your offering is cost effective. Here's an interesting discovery is that salespeople, when you ask them, what is the biggest obstacle you have? They'll say, oh, it's the price. It's the price. I mean, that's the critical factor is the price. People just don't want to pay the amount of money. So they've done some exhaustive research, interviewing tens of thousands of customers, and they've asked them how important is the price in making a buying decision. And there are 7 factors in making a buying decision, and price is always number 7. It's the last one. And I began to teach a course called Selling Higher Priced Products Against Lower Price Competition. And the course was life-changing because people would come to it and I would explain to them in either a half day or a full day course, just exactly how to position your product. And the price is never the reason. And then people say, oh, no, that don't, ooh, the whole audience goes, boo. I said, well, let me ask a question then. Is there anyone here who has anything about their person, private or business, that you purchased solely because it was the lowest price? And the whole audience stops. And there's not a single hand goes up in 1,000 people. Nobody bought anything because it was cheap. You're not going to buy clothes because they're cheap, because they look terrible. You're not going to buy food because it's cheap. In other words, you don't buy things because they're cheap. You buy things because they satisfy really important needs that you have at this time to achieve your goals. Anyway, so the law of cause and effect is so important. It says that if you want to achieve anything, find someone else who's already achieved that, and then study them and find out how they got there, and then do the same thing over and over until you get the same results. So I began to study self-made millionaires back in 1981. I began to study self-made millionaires. A business owner with about 800 branches spread out over the entire continent of North America said he was having an annual convention, and all of the entrepreneurs and business owners, they all wanted someday to become millionaires. Everybody does. If you have half a brain, you would set that as a goal, because if you don't, it's not going to happen. Anyway, so would I do a seminar on how to become a self-made millionaire? So I said, sure. And then I hung up the phone and I realized, OMG, oh my God, I don't know how. I wanted it all my life. I've thought about it. I've talked about it. I was about 36, 37 at this time, but I didn't know how. So I did a crash course on study. I got every piece of research I could find on self-made millionaires. And I was happily astonished to find that there was lots and lots of research. So what I did is I put together a course and I called it the Success Secrets of Self-Made Millionaires. And I gave it at this annual convention in a 1-hour version. And I got a standing ovation. People loved the course. And they asked me, could I do it for their companies and other companies? And I gave this program all over the world. I wrote a book on it, which sold 150,000 copies. I did audio programs on it, which made people rich. And what it was is, here's how people go from rags to riches. They start with nothing. 87% of wealthy people today started with nothing. 87%. 13%, according to the research, started with something or came from a good family and had resources, but most people didn't. So therefore, if the law of cause and effect says, if you want to become wealthy, find out what wealthy people do and do the same thing. With my friend Pete, he told me how to sell. This is how you sell. These are the questions you ask. These are the responses that you give. And if you do that, people will buy from you. And I did, and they did. And within 1 year, my income increased 10 times. And I had almost 100 salespeople working for me in 6 countries. It was just, this expression, SMH, shaking my head, just shaking my head. I could not believe that success was that simple. And everyone, Dennis, you interviewed Dennis recently, my dear friend. He lives just 10 minutes from me here. And Dennis has this wonderful line. He said, you have more potential than you could use in 100 lifetimes. Mm. And I love that, because how could you measure it? But it's a wonderful way to think. You have more potential than you could use in 100 lifetimes. So it's not like you're short of potential. You could do extraordinary things with your life. I remember there's a story about this woman whose husband died. She was about 65, 66 years old. Husband died. She was alone. She lived in a small apartment in Boston. And she got this idea of teaching the importance of world peace. And she began to print little brochures, and she began to give little talks about the importance of world peace. And she named herself Peace Pilgrim. That was her name, Peace Pilgrim. And one day she said, she's got to be able to attract attention, because very few people were interested in this. So she decided to walk from Boston to San Francisco, just walk. And so she closed down her apartment and locked it up and set off walking. And she walked and walked and walked, and people heard about her. And when she got to their city or town, they invited her in, they fed her, they gave her a place to stay. The next day she started off. She walked all the way across the country. This is back in the 70s. And we walked all the way across the country and got to San Francisco. And of course, she got a lot of people invited her to speak and lecture and so on. And she just talked about, loving other people and practicing peace principles and so on. And then she turned around, she walked back all the way back to Boston. And then she turned around and she walked all the way back to San Francisco. And she did this, I think, 3 times, 3 complete walks across the country. Now imagine that. Imagine an old woman, never been into physical fitness, was not a runner. She simply bought some running shoes and set off and walked across the whole country. Now, the reason I tell you that story is because imagine that this is a metaphor. It's a true story, by the way. It's a metaphor for success in life, is that you can walk all the way across every single obstacle you could ever dream of. You have more than potential than you could use in 100 lifetimes. So if you want to become wealthy, if you don't become wealthy, then there's only one person in my who's responsible. In my seminars, I use devices, if you like. One of my devices is, I will say, before we start, I want to ask a question here. Is there anybody here who would like to double their income? And it's a really great question, because it's almost like people's hands are on a spring and they go boing. Every hand in the audience goes up. Everybody wants to double their income. And I say, well, that's great, because I'm going to show you today how to double and triple your income. I'm just going to show you how other professional salespeople in our industry have done it. And if you do the same things, you will get the same results. It's just like gravity, things fall down. If you drop something, it falls down. If you follow my principles, which I've been teaching for many years, then you will double and triple your income. I said, there's nobody in the world that can stop you from doubling your income, except there is one person. Yes, there is one person who can stop you, can hold you back from doubling your income. And I say, and who would that be? And it's really amazing, because any language, any country, whether it's in China or Germany or Rwanda, wherever I've been, and when I ask the question, everybody goes, they point at themselves. They are the only person who can hold them back. Absolutely. And then we all laugh and we smile. I say, now, I promise you, I'm going to show you today how to double your income. I'll give you several different ways over the course of the day. So let's get started. And people go, I want to wait. I want something now. I mean, I don't want to wait. I say, okay, here's a very simple way to double your income. In sales, your income is determined by the number of sales you make, which is determined by the number of people that you talk to. Simple as that. Now, according to the research, the average sales professional talks to 2 new people, prospects, each day. So if you want to double your income, then you need to speak to 4 new prospects each day. So the average salesperson speaks to 1 new person every 4 hours in an 8-hour day. So what you do is you speak to someone new every 2 hours. And if you speak to twice as many people, we don't know which ones of them will buy or not buy, but we do know that if you double the number of people you talk to, you'll double your sales and double your income. And so that's what you're going to do. Now I'm going to tell you over the course of our time together what you do when you talk to twice as many people. But
Right.
first of all, just talk to twice as many people. And I have people come up to me all the time. They say, this is California motivational BS. Yeah, this is all nonsense. I've been in my business for 10 years. You're telling me I can double my income. And I said, look, just give it a try. Just give it a try. Just track how many people you talk to. It's very important that you write it down. The highest paid sales professionals write down what they do, what time they start, how many people they speak to, what was the result of their talk, who they're going to get back to, and so on. Just
Now, Brian, can I ask a question on that?
sure.
So do you feel like that's one of the things that holds people back the most, is that they question something that they hear from somebody that is an expert or that has proven results? Because like you just said, the guy said, no way, that isn't going to work for me. But you're someone that's proven that you get results and get results for others, yet he was still questioning you. Why do you think, number one, that he even was questioning you? And do you think that's part of the reason why he wasn't getting the results he wanted to in the first place?
Well, Devin, with most people, if you go to work, the 80-20 rule applies, that 20% of the people at work earn 80% of the money and 80% earn 20% of the money. So the first thing you do is stop hanging around with the bottom 80%. And most people, they take a job, they go to work, they don't know anybody, they make friends with their coworkers, they go for lunch or drinks after work and so on. No. And I remember a wonderful story of this guy that told me that he went to work for a new company, had no experience. And he noticed that they had about 20 salespeople. There were about 5 people who were the top performers, and they sort of hung out together. And they went to lunch and they talked and so on. And so he went over and he asked them questions. He asked this person, that person, for advice. And in a very short period of time, they invited him to join them. And so he began to hang out with the top performers. And they said, well, this is the first thing you do is when you get up in the morning, this is how you plan your day, this is how you use your time, and so on. And he wrote it down and he began to do what the top people did. And within a few months, he was one of the highest paid salespeople in that company, whereas the other people weren't. So it's a very simple principle. Anyway, to finish that story, one of the guys who came up to me and said, this is all BS, called me back or emailed me and said, I decided to prove you wrong. And I'd prove you wrong. I would do exactly what you said. And so I did, is I wrote down and I tracked my time. I went from 2 people a day to 3 people a day to 4 people a day within 1 month. And my income doubled. And I couldn't believe how much they were paying me. And I wasn't working any more hours than I was before, but I was just talking to twice as many people. He said, I couldn't believe it. He said, you changed my life. My favorite comment that I get back all over the world where I've been and spoken in the past is people come up to me and say, I was at your seminar a year ago, and I have to tell you, You changed my life. You made me rich. Or I was at your seminar 5 years ago. You changed your life, my life. You made me rich. I had a wonderful gentleman came out to see me from New York, and he showed me a picture of his absolutely beautiful home overlooking Lake George in New York or New Jersey, which is one of the great resort areas of the East. And he said, "You see this house? It's a 4-bedroom house. He's married, children, everything else." He said, "You paid for this house just by following this. Just when I followed the things that you taught." And so coming back, one simple loop, and Devin, you could teach it for the rest of your career, is if you want to achieve anything, find out what other people have done to achieve that and do the same thing. When you do the same thing, and my good friend Charlie Jones, who is no longer with us, he would say, and I have to tell you something before we go any further, nothing works. Nothing works. No matter what you hear, no matter what you read, it doesn't work. He said, at least it doesn't work the first time. Maybe not the second or the third or the fourth time. So what you have to do is be prepared for the fact that nothing works, at least initially. And you just have to keep trying it over and over, like riding a bicycle. The first time you ride a bicycle, you fall over. So what you do is you get back up, get on the bike, fall over the other way. And you keep doing this. And in a short period of time, pretty soon you can get on a bicycle and you can ride a bicycle for the rest of your life. So in a short period of time, you can increase your income and increase it again, and you can earn more for the rest of your life. And there's only one person in the world who can hold you back, and that's yourself. And so I decided to give this talk on how to become a self-made millionaire. And people said, "Can you give that talk for my company? Can you give that talk for my company?" I said, "Sure." So I gave it again and again, and went from 60 minutes to 90 minutes to 3 hours to a full day seminar. It went from a few basic principles to 21 principles. And so it's called 21 Ways to Double Your Income and achieve all of your goals. And it's about, you can get it on Amazon for a couple of dollars. But the point is that if you just do those things, which everybody else has done, and I've never had a person in 3 decades since I did that, I've never had a person say it didn't work.
Wow.
Every single person says it works, and they said it works far faster. I would say this is what will happen in the course of a year or 5 years, and so on. I said, "That's too conservative." He said, "I'm earning twice as much as I ever earned in my life, and it's only been a year since I started practicing it." So all I get is like a river of success stories. I never have a person say, "I tried that and it didn't work." They always say, "I tried it and I could not believe how well it worked and how fast."
So Brian, that's one thing right there, and I'm so glad you touched so hard on it, is learning from the experts. But if you had to give me very quickly 3 other keys to unleashing your personal potential, what would they be?
Well, that's a great question. I call this the golden triangle of success. If you could imagine a golden triangle with 3 points. And by the way, almost everything has 3 keys to success. I'll talk about this in a second because it's a fabulous idea. But anyway, so I say, here's the golden triangle. It has 3 points, and this is the key to success. The first point is for you to accept complete responsibility for your life and for everything that happens to you. Refuse to make excuses or blame other people. Just say from now on the magic words, "I am responsible. I'm responsible." Now, you may have had a lot of situations that you had no control over, but you're in control of how you respond. So your ability to respond, called your response ability, is the key to your success. And until you respond effectively, until you accept responsibility, you remain a child. But when you accept responsibility, you cross over a line and you become an adult. And the great majority, that 80%, are all still children in their thinking. They blame their situation. It's the product, it's the company, it's the competition, it's the market, it's the this, the that, or something else. It's the way my parents raised me. And give yourself a shake. Is what you say is, I am responsible. Then the next question is, responsible for what? The second point of the triangle is goals. And when I learned goals, it changed my life forever. And goals are very simple. I've written a book on it. I've done audio programs on it, but it's very simple. Decide exactly what you want and write it down. Make a list of everything that you could think of to do to achieve that. Organize the list by priority. What's the first thing to do? And then start and work on your goals every single day. And the third point is continuous learning. Is from now for the rest of your life, read and learn. I read about 3 hours a day. I read about 3 hours a day. I buy book after book. You could see behind me, I have about 6,000 books in my home, upstairs, downstairs. See, the bookshelves are all double booked. There's two rows of
You don't play around, Brian.
No, and my whole house is full of books. And I read them, and I read them, and I take notes, and I write them down. And here's the other thing. When you learn something new and good, try it out immediately. Take action immediately. Don't wait. Don't say, well, that's a good idea, and I'll get back to that after Christmas and so on. No, do it now. Do it immediately, and don't expect it to work. Nothing works the first time. But if you practice it, whatever it is, if you practice it within a short period of time, you will master it. Once you've mastered it, you'll be astonished at how quickly your income grows and how you can take complete charge of your life. So those are the big three: accept responsibility, no excuses, no blaming. Number two is goals. Decide exactly what you want. You want to double your income, write it down. And here's an important point. Your goals have to be in writing. If you don't write them down, it's like smoking a cigarette in a large airplane hangar. The smoke just disappears. But if you write it down, it's concrete. So one of the things that I taught, again, I learned it, is write down your goals every morning before you start. Make a list of your 10 most important goals, select the most important one, and work on that all day long. Many people have doubled their income in as little as a week. I used to do a coaching program, and I would bring people in for a full day every 3 months for a year. I charged $5,000. And people said, well, that's too much money. That's a lot of money. I can't afford it. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a guarantee. You'll double your income and double your time off within 12 months, or I'll give you your money back. There's no charge. And I say, well, okay, if you'll double my income and double my time off, I'll do it. And so they would come. And now my goal was to make sure that I didn't have to give back any refunds. And so I would give them the first thing is goal setting. Write down your goals. I would hand out a workbook like this, spiral notebook, and I would say, every morning get up and write down your goals, your top 10 goals in the present tense as though they had already been realized. So let's say you're earning $50,000 a year and your goal is to double your income. You write down, I earn $100,000 in 2022. I weigh this number of pounds. I have this kind of a home, a car. Write them down as though they were already true, and you're just reporting them. Now, what happens is your subconscious and your superconscious mind then goes to work to make your written goals into your reality. Writing them down is the most incredible thing. They found, Harvard did a study a few years ago where they took the graduating class of the MBA faculty, some of the smartest, brightest people in the country, and they asked them, how many of you have written goals and plans to achieve them when you leave the university? They found that 3% of adults, of graduates, had written goals and plans. 12% had goals, but they weren't in writing. The other 80% had no goals. They had hopes and wishes. So they went back 10 years later and they interviewed them. And basically, one of the things they asked is, how are you doing financially? They found that the people who had written their goals down were earning on average 10 times that of everyone else. So the top 3% were earning 10 times. The 12% who had goals but not in writing were earning twice as much. And the other 80% were the 80% that was still struggling. So all you have to do is write down your goals every day and work from a list of written goals. And that alone will guarantee that you will double your income and become one of the highest paid people in America. It's as simple as that. And people say, it can't be that simple. I say, just give it a try. Just give it a try. And I've never had a person anywhere in the world who said it didn't work. They couldn't believe how fast written goals transformed their lives.
So simple yet so effective, Brian. That's what really gets me about that. Now, Brian, as you look at 2022 coming, things are a lot different now than when you first started.
Right.
Some of the basic principle foundations, those are all the same. But as you look at technology and all the advancements that we have, what is the advice that you have to somebody that's coming up to take advantage, or how can we take advantage of this technological revolution and maximize our success in this new age?
Well, it's fairly simple, Devin, is just continue learning. Just continue learning, adapting, adjusting. Two critical points. They did a study in the 90s, and they asked what would be the most important qualities for success in the 21st century. And they got the answers, and the number one answer was flexibility. Is you need to be flexible. You need to be flexible. And part of flexibility is adaptability, is you have to adapt to the new world. And things are changing faster than ever before. And your job is to change at the same speed. Keep studying, keep learning, keep reading, keep attending courses, keep upgrading your knowledge and skills. And if you do that, it's virtually a slam dunk guarantee that you'll be one of the highest paid people in our society. And if you don't, you won't. It's pretty black and white. If you continually upgrade your skills, you'll be wealthy. And if you don't, you'll just have to struggle. And so that's the key to success is adaptability, flexibility, learning new things, trying new things, dropping things that don't work, starting with things that do work. And remember this, is that you have more ability or potential than you could use in 100 lifetimes. And you can learn any skill that you need to learn to achieve any goal you could set for yourself. I'll give you a very simple one. I was sitting down in my little room, and I was struggling, and I was knocking on doors and making maybe 2 sales a week. And I asked myself, what is the one skill that would help me the most to make more sales? And the answer was closing the sale. And later I realized that this is common for almost everybody. And so I began to study. I did a full court press, as we say, sales closing techniques. And I made myself an expert on closing sales. And as I said, my income went up 10 times in 1 year. I couldn't believe it. And I began teaching the art of closing the sale. And I have a book on it and audio programs on it. And everybody who uses that comes back to me and says they can't believe it. I cannot believe it. I never earned so much money in my whole life, because they know how to professionally, courteously ask the person to make a buying decision now. And these methods and techniques have been tested and proven over and over again by countless people, and all top highly paid salespeople have learned how to ask the customer to buy. And once you have that, what happens, it's an interesting thing, is when you know how to ask the customer to buy, you are much more aggressive in prospecting, because you know the more you prospect, the more sales you're going to make. And so what happens is you are motivated to make more calls. One of the reasons why people don't make enough calls is because deep down inside, they're afraid of failing, because they know that when it comes to asking for the order, they don't know how. But once you know how, once you master the art of closing the sale, you become very aggressive at selling. You can hardly wait to talk to more people, because the more people you talk to, the more money you're going to earn. So
Brian,
those are some of the things that I would suggest to our friends who are watching, Devin.
you got to give us at least one or two of those tips to close the sale. Everyone here listening is wondering, how do I do that, Brian? What would you say to us?
Well, my program has 24 techniques. They're the most popular techniques, and uh, they vary. The usage of them varies depending upon the situation. But let me give you perhaps the very best technique, and it's very simple. You finish the sales presentation, and you ask Mr. Prospect, do you have any questions or concerns that I haven't covered yet? And you must be clear about this, because if there is still a concern in the back of the customer's mind, they can't buy. They can just put you off by saying, well, let me think about it. So instead you say, do you have any questions or concerns that I haven't covered? And if the prospect says, no, I think you've covered it, then these are the magic words. Well, then, why don't you give it a try? Why don't you give it a try? And it's called the invitational close, is you invite the customer to buy. And it's very simple. Do you have any questions or concern? If the answer is no, well, then why don't you give it a try? And it's just astonishing how many people say, well, sure, why not? They can't think of a reason not to. So that's considered, I think, the very best closing technique that I know, the invitational close. Why don't you give it a try? And it's astonishing. But you must first, sort of, I say, clear the ground. You must first ask them, do you have any questions or concerns that I haven't covered? And the prospect then has to say, well, no, I think you've covered everything. Then why don't you give it a try? And it's amazing. When I learned that technique, my sales doubled that next week. And
Wow.
it continued to go up.
Oh my! And Brian, one thing that first time I read it, my mouth almost dropped to the floor. It was the fact that one of the best ways to avoid somebody saying, I'll call you back, is saying, I'm sorry, I don't take callbacks.
Yes. Yes. That was a second technique that I used, because when I got that idea, I'll call you back, I realized that was killing me. So I was just say, you're right. I'm sorry, I don't make callbacks. And the prospect would say, you don't make prospects? Everybody makes callbacks. I said, no. I said, Mr. Prospect, you know what I'm going to say is, everything you're ever going to know about this product already. From this point onward, you are not going to learn anything new or different. You know it all already. So therefore, why don't you just give it a try? And you're right. And my sales just went out. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I went from making 2 sales a week to making 3 sales in the first 45 minutes, where I was knocking on doors, office doors. The first 45 minutes where I used that, I don't make callbacks close. I made 3 sales in a row. I made more in 45 minutes than I'm used to making a week. And so sometimes just one very simple technique that is appropriate for you and for your business and your product at this time, one appropriate technique can double your income right there. And it's wonderful. And when you start to make sales, there's a psychological principle that basically says that when you achieve a goal that's important to you, making a sale, it releases endorphins in your brain. It makes you happy. It motivates and stimulates you, and it drives you, almost like somebody pushing you with 2 hands from the back. It drives you into repeating what you just did to get that result. And so now you're motivated to make more calls on more people and say the same things to more people. And pretty soon you can hardly wait to get out there and make calls. And I used to run between calls. I called on offices, spoke to executives, but I used to run because I was so excited about getting to the next person. And I knew that I was going to get rejected. So if I was going to get rejected, let's get it over with and move on to the next plan, the next. And I would get up in the morning and I would say I could hardly wait for the first rejection, because the first rejection would motivate me into making the next call and the next call. And all these things are written down. And it's astonishing. I've had countless salespeople, and this is by survey. Nightingale Conant did a study. They said more salespeople became millionaires with your material than with anything else. I did a program, and I was just talking to a very wealthy multimillionaire who, again, started off at the bottom. And I did a program called The Psychology of Selling. And the psychology of selling makes people rich. It's considered the best sales training program ever produced. And I have heard from people all over the world, it's in 35 languages. You changed my life. You made me rich. Could not believe it. The sales program is simple. It's practical. It's honest. There's no pressure. There's no gimmicks. There's no techniques. It's basically forming friendships with people. Seth Godin had this wonderful one-liner. He said, your job is to turn strangers into friends and friends into customers. Perfect way of looking at it. Turn strangers into friends and friends into customers, and to help them improve their lives with the product or service that you offer. And then you ask them questions to find out how your product or service can help them the most. And then you show them that if they buy it and own it, it will work. And for me, I've been for 50 years, I always give unconditional guarantees. I say, basically, take it, use it. If for any reason at all, you're not happy with it, give it back to me and I'll give you 100% of your money back. No questions asked. People come to my seminars, and I saw other people, they would offer a seminar and they would say, if after the first half a day, you're not happy, then you can get your money back. So what I would say is you can come to my seminar, you can attend the entire seminar, 2 or 3 days. And if for any reason you're not delighted, we'll give you your money back so fast, it'll burn your hand. In other words, if you're not happy, you should not pay. That's our principle. If you don't feel you had your money's worth, then you should not pay, and we won't charge you. And so I got it to the point. Now the onus is on me to make sure that the prospect or customer is happy. And I finally got it to 1 in 400. One person in 400 would ask for the money back. It's and I offered products, I offered audios, videos, books, seminars, but the return rate was 1 in 400. We have a staff of about 35 people who work with our products and services and so on. And my partner was telling me people love working at our company because when they talk to customers, they can tell the customers that it's unconditionally guaranteed. There's no pressure. They don't have to put pressure on anybody. They just explain how you can get the very most benefit from this. And if you're not happy, give your money back. And so that's a wonderful way to approach the business of selling.
I love that, Brian. That gives me so many ideas of how to approach things even better. Just giving that unconditional guarantee and believing in your product and service that much that you know that it's going to have that effect is incredible. Brian, I want to ask you one more question before I get to my very final question. And I ask that one to everybody. But my question is, there's a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs who are listening to this show. So my question for you is, for those that are maybe trying to earn their first $1,000 or $2,000, $3,000 a month from their coaching business, they're in the early stages. What would you be focusing on to grow that coaching business?
Well, I'll give you a wonderful example. I had a woman come up to me in my seminar. She was telling me that she was working in personnel consulting, finding staff for companies with a large company, and she decided to start her own business. And she did, and she found it was really hard prospecting, knocking on doors. Finally, she found a human resources executive in a large company, and she said, "Well, I'll give you a chance to find us. We need a senior accountant or something like that." So she went out and she just worked full blast to find the right person for this company. And every week she would call and she would give a report on how she was doing and who she'd spoken to and what they said and so on. And she found the right person and they had hired that person and they were very happy. And they had gave her another assignment. Well, she only had this one customer. And so she worked full blast to make this customer happy. And this customer said, and I've heard this now 2 or 3 times in different areas, said, I've never got such great customer service as I'm getting from you. You call me back every week and give me a report on how you're doing and where you are and what's happening and so on. Is the other people that I've hired, they may call me back if they find someone, or they may call me back once a month. But you give such great service. I'm going to introduce you to my friends in human resources in other companies and recommend that they use you. And so she ended up with tremendous business. But she said the reason she gave such incredible service is because she only had one customer. And so she just gave that person tremendous service. And now she hired people and she said, that's what we do. Every week, we go back to every customer and we give them a full report on a progress report. And she said it was amazing, just amazing. So my point is, this is a really important thing to do is keep in touch with your customers, report back to them, tell them how things are going, tell them how their account, their product, their service is. People love it when you take the time to keep them informed about what's going on in their lives and in their business.
I love it, Brian. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so simple yet so powerful. And the last thing I have for you, Brian, as this has been a transformative episode, is as you look back over your life and all the countries and millions of people that you've impacted, what do you hope that the contribution you've had is, and what is the legacy that you hope to leave behind?
Well, these are questions I've given a lot of thought to. A great turning point in my life many years ago was when I discovered the power of the self-concept. And the self-concept is the way you think about yourself. And, Earl Nightingale said that you become what you think about most of the time. And so the question is, what do you think about most of the time? And whatever you think about on the inside, by projection, will become the reality on the outside. And so part of your self-concept is your self-esteem. Your self-esteem is defined as how much you like yourself, how much you respect yourself, admire yourself, and so on. And I found that your self-esteem is the most important thing in your life. It's how you feel appreciated and valuable and important. And there seems to be a reciprocal relationship. Everything that you do that raises the self-esteem of others raises your self-esteem as well. And so my wife and I just had our first child, and Christina, and we decided that we would really do a full court press on building her self-esteem and improving her self-concept. And we did. And we have 4 children, and each one of the children, we focused single-mindedly on raising their self-esteem and improving their self-concept so they felt really good about themselves. But here's another thing, Devin. Everything that you do has a result. As my friend Charlie Jones would say, everything counts. Everything counts. Either everything moves you towards your goal or moves you away. Nothing is neutral. Everything that you do affects your self-esteem in some way. It causes you to like yourself and respect yourself more, or the opposite. So if you have children, or if you have a spouse, both, is make them feel important, make them feel valuable and appreciated. The greatest, most destructive influence of all is destructive criticism from your parents when you're growing up. And so we made a decision. I'd had enormous amount of destructive criticism. We made a decision that our children would never be criticized, never, because it is so destructive. It is the cancer of the human psyche. So our children, we are praised and appreciated, but they've never been criticized. 3 of our children now have 3 grandchildren, 2 grandchildren, and they never criticize their kids because they know what an amazing thing it is when you tell your children how good they are and tell them how much you love them and how much you respect them. And we get really happy when they do anything. They just grow up feeling like they can conquer the world. And that's the most important part of the self concept is self-esteem. And so one of the things that I've taught, and millions of people have told me this, I tell people to say the magic words, I like myself. I like myself. You remember that. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. And the most wonderful thing is that every time you say it, it goes deeper and deeper. And finally, you reach the point where it's almost like the first stage of the rocket drops off. It's almost like the first stage of doubt and fear and anxiety and unsureness about yourself and insecurity, that just drops off. And now you like yourself, you respect yourself, you feel good about yourself, and you do everything possible to make other people feel the same way. And there's a direct reciprocal relationship. If you raise the self-esteem of others, your own self-esteem goes up. When you compliment others and tell them how good they are, you like and respect yourself even more. And so you get better and better as they get better and better. And that is your great job in your business, in my business, is to remember to tell people how good they are and how they can be even better by practicing these ideas and principles, by learning these ideas that are used by other successful people.
Life-changing, Brian. This is absolutely life-changing. I'm about to jump up and down. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. I was reading that the other day in The Psychology of Selling, and it seems so simple, but it's so effective. That's what I love most about everything that you do. You don't try to reinvent the wheel. You just work things that work. And that is amazing. So, Brian, before we leave, I know that there is an opportunity. You're offering a personal transformation masterclass, if I'm correct. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, we sent out this multi-page proposal, and basically what it says is we have a transformational seminar that you can take that takes about 5 minutes a day, and we teach you how to think, feel, act, behave in such a way that you dramatically increase your results, your income, you feel great about yourself, you do better in your work, in your personal life. And the cost, I don't even have the cost. I can probably pull it up here.
Brian, you don't got to worry about that. I'm going to cover all the details in a different segment. I just wanted the people to know that you are offering something for them that is going to change their life.
Yes, and I have to tell you, it's life-changing. It is the very best sort of combination or merging of all the best principles that I've been teaching now for about 40 years. I've taught personally, face-to-face, to more than 5 million people, and I've sold more than 10 million books that share these principles. And what we're offering now is a very inexpensive, very high-quality version. And like everything else we sell, it's unconditionally guaranteed. If you're not happy with it after you've taken it and tried it out, if you're not happy with it, then there's no charge. And we never get requests for refunds because this stuff works very fast. Just like you were saying, I like myself. I like myself. So what you do is you pump yourself up before you go to see a new customer or any kind of a meeting. Yeah, I like myself. I like myself.
Oh,
what
man.
you do is you start to feel so good about yourself, and you become more effective. Your mind seems to work at a higher level, and you make more sales, you make more money, you're more popular with other people, you are more creative. It's a phenomenal thing because the more you like yourself, the better your brain functions. The better your brain functions, the more ideas you have to achieve more of your goals. So we could spend forever talking about this, but please, if you'll just introduce them to this program that we're offering them, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And those of you that are listening, you already heard a little bit about it in the intro, but if you are just listening to this now, I want you to bring your full attention back to me, and you could just go to briantracy.com/personal transformation, and you could pick it up just for Brian. I can't even believe I'm saying this price. $197. You can have your life radically. I can't believe it, Brian. I got to talk to you about that price or something.
And it takes a few minutes a day, and it's unconditionally guaranteed. And it has worked for hundreds of thousands, millions of people in 84 countries. There's basically no failures. Everybody who follows these ideas gets results way beyond anything that they expected.
Well, Brian, I've gotten such value out of this, and I know everyone that is listening has as well. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I want to publicly acknowledge about 2 months ago, I did an episode about something you told me on Clubhouse. You gave me advice. You said, Devin, don't worry about getting anything. You said, just give until it hurts, and eventually everything will come back to you. I started doing that, Brian, and within 1 month, my income raised 6 times, 600%.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
It changed my life, Brian. I just want to say thank you, and this has been a lot of fun. And you are a man's man, Brian. So thank you so much. This has been one for the ages.
God bless you. I'll say goodbye to you now, and we'll talk again.